Um, as I said, perhaps just to reflect on some of the things that we've said, that the fast is not about um, the eating and drinking. The real fast is about controlling one's emotions, controlling one's feelings, controlling the way one behaves, and that's the real lesson. And perhaps just to go over some of the things that we've just said might help to reflect, and perhaps that might be an indication of what we need to do next in the next lesson, as of those 10 chapters that I just mentioned.
You've
What's
mentioned.
probably most relevant to him is anger, how to deal with anger. Um, and then of the next section, so to speak, of the book, the two areas that probably are most important for him are, are Toba, repentance, turning how to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And perhaps the most important is the last chapter, which is remembrance of death. And this chapter on remembrance of death is probably the it comes right at the end of Ihya Ulumuddin. And the reason why it's so important is because if you understand death and you realize, when I say realize, the word realize means to make a reality inside your heart. The word, we use the word, do you realize? We use it so very commonly. However, the real meaning of realize is to make a thing a reality in your heart. When we realize the meaning of death, that the meaning of death comes in our hearts, and that's for many people is what changes their life totally. And I think last week I mentioned Sarah and how she's unable to fast, but actually there's much more to that story. Is that Alhamdulillah she was on a journey, but the most important part of her journey was probably when she was in intensive care on a ventilator a few years ago, and when she came out of that, she said that that experience was what changed her life completely, because the death became the reality to her. And I remember teaching a course on the remembrance of death before that, and she said that it really affected her and kind of prepared her for what she felt. And then afterwards, the first thing she wanted, my dars after she came out of hospital, could you teach the class on remembrance of death? Why? Because the meaning of death had come so close to her. And every single thing that happened in her life after that was related to the fact that she nearly died. And likewise now with this coronavirus situation, for us it was not such a big shock, because we've known all along since she came out of hospital, the doctor said the next time she gets a virus it will probably kill her. So it's as if we've already known what to expect. What really hit me was when I read a doctor saying how difficult it was when somebody came to the hospital in London and they told the patient, would you like to die in hospital, alone, on a ventilator with one nurse, or do you want to die at home? Because she was positive with coronavirus, and it was clear because of her age and her condition that she wasn't going to get through this. So here, that reality of death is now grasping everybody. You walk in the street, and I remember just walking past the lady a couple of weeks ago. She looked at me in shock because she thought I was walking too close to her. I was standing the mandatory 2 meters away, and I wasn't going to come anywhere near her. But the shock and the fear in her face was quite shocking. It was quite scary, actually. But this is because the reality of death has hit her. So this chapter on the reality of death and the chapter on Toba, repentance, are probably the two chapters at the end of the book, the last part of the book, that are so important. So to answer the brother's question again, you need to think, you need to restudy, you need to reflect. You also need to practice what's in here, the practicalities about dealing with anger. And inshallah, like I said, I'm leaving that open to you and everybody else to make suggestions of which of those chapters we look at. And perhaps this brother, I imagine he might want to vote for the chapter on anger.